Well, in Brussels, most of the people live in these kind of houses, and not many people live nor want to live in this kind of blocks, like the one behind me. Even though Brussels and Belgium's politics in general, it's all about living together, there still seems like there is a big stigma about collectively living in big blocks, such as this one over here. We would like to explore the big social housings in Brussels and compare them with the blocks, the social housing in the mecca of social housing, Singapore. We'll strip them down and we'll see how good or how bad they are.
And maybe we can discover why people in Brussels don't like these big, scary and deadly social blocks.
Let's start stripping some architecture.
Tip number 1. Feasibility equals popularity. It's more logical to build separate towers than longer structures because it makes more sense from shading perspective, soil conservation, porosity, etc. However, that also requires more creative disposition of the buildings and more technical equipment per building, which of course it is more expensive. Therefore, in places where living in high-rise buildings is not popular, like in Brussels, the most economically feasible solution is to execute the most expensive part, foundations, excavations and technicalities in one shot and then simply multiply the same floor plan. And then, this is how you end up with vast, empty and contentless spaces. Tip number 2. Social content equals social contact.
There is a lot of green space and open area around the different blocks, so it's all well protected and bordered with hedge. So we have a very nice place, green areas, but inaccessible.
On the other hand, in Singapore, the proximity of the buildings creates certain feeling of coziness. Additionally, the space between the housing blocks is always fulfilled with urban equipment such as courts for sport activities, water, cooling equipment, shaded areas, benches, even communal fridges. These are in fact facilitators of the basic social fabric that actually hold the spatial integrity together. Tip number 3. Flow of movement.
The space between the blocks is quite liminal, and we have to go through different kind of uncomfortable places in order to reach different distances.
On the contrary, the space in between the tall living buildings in Singapore often is narrative and it gives sense of navigation. This effect is extremely important because it creates spatial continuity, mental map and flow of movement. Tip number 4. Interactive ground floor.
Another thing that's very interesting is that the fronts of the housings of the big blocks are always kind of empty, blind, monotone and numb.
In Singapore, the ground floor is designed in order to offer interaction between people and objects as well.
There are zones where people can just sit, for example, like this, yeah.
Of course, it could always be designed in a better way, but all the ground floor being packed with bicycles, open public elevators, sitting parapets, mailboxes, lockers and such have a very specific function and a message. The home, the apartment, the flat, it's not limited only to your bedrooms and living room, but it also spills out onto the public domain. Tip number 5. Materials matters.
It's very important is the material. Okay, they were built in the 60s, so the time was like to show the concrete. Material that's with the time is not really durable, repetitive and it's like not very good. But here what we see in Singapore, we see that they use very often the white color, which we know it's kind of hard for maintenance due to different reasons. It's interesting that using the white color with some different pastel colors on it, it makes this big, massive, repetitive top-down settlements to not look that much aggressive, and actually from the inside they're quite friendly and welcoming.
And as a wrap-up tip for this episode, tip number 6. Sound atmosphere. This is what you hear in between the social blocks on Saturday afternoon in Brussels. And this is what you hear in Singapore. Don't know about you, but we prefer the second one. So a quick conclusion for today. We know we have explored only one example of tall social buildings in Brussels, but regardless of several differences, more or less they're all the same.
As a matter of fact, these blocks are standing out there since 60 years, but in reality we have witnessed no single initiative that shows how we can rethink these blocks and the area around them. Therefore, there is a lack of knowledge about redesigning large housing blocks.
In that sense, we have a little news for you. With an ongoing trend for urban densification, we will have to learn how to live in a large collective housing units.
Finally, in Brussels, there is a culture of private land ownership, which resonates that everyone should have their own house. I am one of them.
So as you can see on our sketched reflection on the screen, living in apartments in large social blocks is being considered as
Unfortunately, odd,
weird,
black sheep,
as someone is pointing the finger at you,
as if you are not too cool,
party breaker,
anti-mainstream, like house ownership.
In other words, you are the one in the room that should answer the question, why? Perfect stigmatization conditions.
So thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, like and share. Don't miss the next video because we will explore together 3 most crucial tips for designing and living in a
large social blocks.
You saved my ass.